We're not starting yet, y'all. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. Now I'm as ready as I'm going to be. See if this works. Not yet. It's on. There we go. Okay. We're in Exodus chapter 3. You have the pleasure of having me speak tonight. I've had about, 25 hours of stuff to fit into this 24-hour day. And then I got a call at 4:30 that said I had to drive all the way home and back here to pick the girls up because Sheena was not feeling well. So just added some stress. But I'm good. We're good. We're going to have fun and hopefully learn something here. Troy told me that I was lucky this was the best chapter to teach. And I missed an opportunity of saying, well, you can teach that one too. But I wasn't quick enough. No, Exodus chapter 3, this is the chapter with Moses at the burning bush. It's a pivotal chapter. It is one that before we started studying this book this year, I imagine nearly everyone that knows anything about the Bible knows about Moses in the burning bush, or they've heard something about it. And how often do you have someone that has a conversation with God in the Scriptures? I mean, that's what we're about to study. Such a rare, unique event. Sorry for the interruption here. Thank you. Chris was my helper with classes. I appreciate it. All right, so what I'd like to do is we're going to work our way through the chapter. A lot of this will go pretty quickly. Oh, good, we got out on time like I'm always asking everyone to do. We got plenty of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to read sections of Scripture, and then we'll talk about it. I don't want to be the only one talking. You're certainly welcome to comment. I've prepared some things about this, but I'm sure other people have good thoughts too. All right? First of all, Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. So, who's Jethro again? What was his name last week when you studied in chapter 2? Ruel. Who knows how to explain that discrepancy? Well, as Troy was helping me prepare last week, we were talking moving chairs, and there are two explanations that are both just as reasonable, and I don't think we have a good answer as to which one's which. That was my understanding, at least. And so those explanations are that in the Bible, when they say daughter of or son of, it doesn't necessarily mean only the literal one generation above. That could just as easily be grandfather or great-grandfather or patriarch of the family even. Okay? So that's one answer. The other answer is that Jethro is a title, or I guess maybe Ruel is a title. Either one is a title for the priest in that time. I got that right? So we're okay with this. These are two different descriptions. Could be two different people. Could be the same person with two different names. His father-in-law, who is a priest. All right. Where is Moses in Midian, right? Y'all turn to the maps in your Bibles. Where is Midian in your map? See if you can find it on the Old Testament map. I didn't draw a hand-drawn picture, so I just got the one that I'm using that has it labeled where it is there. There is some discrepancy I have in this Bible. It's different than the map I have. Here we go. So where is Horeb? And Midian, the land of Midian. Who found it in their Bible maps? Where is it? Down at the bottom of the Sinai Peninsula. So, right down here. That's where I have it on this map, across right there. All right? In this map on the World Video Bible School, they have Midian and Mount Sinai right down. They got Midian. No, they still got Midian over here and Mount Sinai right here. Yeah, which Horeb, what's Horeb also known as? I skipped over that part. This is what we call Mount Sinai, right? Called two different places. What else happened here at Mount Horeb later on? Ten Commandments, that's right. This is where the children of Israel came. And we'll see something about that here in a minute. So Moses is over here, and I bring this up to tell you this, another interesting situation that archaeology and further discovery is calling into question is, where is Mount Horeb? Where is Mount Sinai? Now, it's not labeled on this map that I recall, but if Midian is here, Mount Sinai on most of your maps is labeled in this area or down at the bottom of this peninsula right there. I blew that map up where you can see it good. Anyway. So who knows how we know that Mount Sinai, why people thinking in your maps it has Mount Sinai in this area? In between these two bays here, gulfs, on this situation. Yeah, okay. The west side of the wilderness, okay. Yep. So there is this is obviously in line with what's not in most of your Bibles, and it's a differing view that basically says that Midian was over here and Mount Horeb is over here and Mount Sinai is over here. And I think I cut it off on the map because I wasn't really, this is not the point of the lesson, but there is some discrepancy. There is some unknown. There's the tradition of Mount Sinai being in this area, but nobody really knows exactly. They haven't found it, is my understanding. Anyway. What's that? They don't know which one it is from 4,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago. All right. When will the people return to Mount Horeb? You had it. They'll return there after they leave Egypt. That's where the Ten Commandments are given. So wherever this mountain is, the same place as Moses is now. All right. So I need a volunteer to read Exodus chapter 3, verses 2 and 3. That's good. That's good. Just 2 and 3. All right. So, and that's what we'll just read a couple verses at the time and talk about them. So, the way I feel like I've known this event, the narrative of this event my whole life. So, the general broad strokes are not new to me. But when I read something like this, I read this week, I find the things that were different from what I remembered. Okay? And first thing off the bat was this idea that it's the angel of the Lord that appeared. that was the fire in the bush. Not God himself, not some magic trick, but that was the way the angel appeared. Okay? But who spoke to Moses when he speaks farther down? It was God in verse 4. That's a trick question. We didn't read that one yet, right? Okay. Then Moses looks, sees that the bush is burning, but not being consumed. So the bush is burning, but it's not burning up. And what does he say to himself? In your own words. What? That's interesting. I got to check this out, right? And turn aside. He turns aside and goes over and checks it out. I don't know what lesson we can draw from that, but that's important because of verse 4. Who will read verses 4 through 6? 4, 5, and 6.
So when the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. He said, Here I am. And he said, Do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God.
All right. This is a pretty important moment here. When did the Lord reach out to Moses? When he had his attention, when he turned aside to check it out, right? He had Moses' attention with this angel in the bush burning, and he calls out to Moses, and he answers, Here I am, right? This is me. He stands before God. Well, he doesn't even know who it is yet. But God knows his name. He says, Here I am. You know, who else gave that answer in the scriptures when God called out to them? Samuel. And Saul on the road to Tarsus. No, not on the road to Damascus. Yeah. Whew. Okay. Saul of Tarsus on the road to Damascus. Sorry. I didn't look that one up, but I know that's what Samuel said when the Lord called out to him when he was a child. Samuel, Samuel, here I am, here I am, here I am. Okay. That's the appropriate response when we come in contact with God, right? Here I am. What do I need to do? Yes, sir. Yep. Oh, why is that? All right. That's a very pointed question. Well, so what makes this holy ground? The presence of God. Presence of God. Where is God today? Everywhere. Yeah. You're welcome to. What do you got?
Well, you brought up the fact that there in verse 2 it says the angel of the Lord appeared to him.
Mm-hmm.
Flame, and then he says, I'll turn aside, and it says the Lord saw he turned aside. And God, you look in verse 6, and he says, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham. The word there is the word Elohim, not Yahweh. And so many times we talk about what's called theophany.
Okay.
An appearance, a deity. In this case, you consider John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God.
Yes.
And so this is Jesus in the bush there. And with the word Elohim being used, meaning that the word can be used for plural of God, as in the Trinity.
instead of the word that what they translate angel is actually the word Elohim. That's what messenger.
That's right.
Thank you. We're all definitely learning something here, but not from me. No, but so where is so if God is everywhere, do we have any kind of equivalent of this holy ground today? Yes, they had to stay off the mountain. They could not go onto the mountain. What about in our lives? What do you think?
We take off our shoes?
Well, we take off our shoes every day, hopefully.
The only thing that I can think of that would be like that would be holy ground, if you will, would be when we partake of the Lord's Supper, that we are remembering His flesh and His blood. Whenever we see a baptism, that represents His blood. Those are the only two things I can think of where you come in contact with those things that are holy.
Well, no physical place. I think that's no physical place. I was all along those same lines. I was thinking when we come together here to worship God, we're the body of Christ. That's where we need to revere that, respect that, and the same principle of reverence and respect and specialness. This.
It was always custom back in those times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you wouldn't walk around in the wilderness without your protective footwear on, right? Because there's all manner of things that can mess you up, get your feet, get hurt, get injury. What happens if you're miles from home and with a cut foot? Nothing good, right? Nothing good. I've been lost, but not hurt, and that's not a good sign. I can't imagine being miles and miles away and being hurt and having to get somewhere. So this is a very important, this is something you would not normally do except in a resting time or some special place. So that's, anyway. And how does God identify himself? What is the name, or how does he describe and introduce himself to Moses? We call them three wandering Jews in the little VBS song. Once there was three wandering Jews. These are the fathers of the Jewish people. And that's exactly how God's going to describe himself or his name later in the chapter. This is how he introduced himself to Moses. Moses hides his face. He was afraid to look at God. With good reason, just another example of reverence and fear and the respect we should have for God, being in his presence. All right? Any other thoughts on those verses? So I tried, yes ma'am. Okay. All right. Let's now read 7 through 9, 7, 8, and 9. And this is why I've come to you. What is the Lord addressing here? Two things in this passage. What's that? Bring them out of Egypt and put them where? Canaan. Fulfill his promise to Abraham, right? Fulfill his promise to Abraham. Deliver them from their oppression. Fulfill the promise to Abraham to put them in possession of the land of Canaan. Okay, now, children of Israel, what their station was at this point in time, where they were. If you were just, some guy that lived at this time that was, whatever age you are, at this moment when God's talking to Moses on Mount Horeb, and you're stuck building blocks with no straw, right? What's your life like? It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. What was the life of your father and grandfather like? Or mother and grandmother? Hard and, yeah.
They worked hard, little money.
Very little possessions, worked hard, answered to someone else, no freedom, no real freedom. Not a pleasant thing. Anybody you ever talk to not live that way? I don't think so. I mean, it was 80 years before when they were killing babies, killing all the male babies, right? I can't imagine living in a time like that. How terrible would that be? Horrible. That's right, horrible.
For the mother, having a baby and having a male baby, if someone would take my baby and want to kill it, I
Yeah.
can't even
I don't know, our government and Planned Parenthood is killing about 900 babies every day.
They are, but that's right. But that's voluntary.
Yeah.
That's voluntary by the mothers at least. Well, you got the babies, you got the life of bondage and work and physical labor. It's hard to imagine how bad that would be. Hard to imagine how bad that would be. What do you think these people's relationship with God was like?
Probably very close.
You think so?
I think so.
My way I imagine it would be the opposite.
I think being depressed like that by a nation and a people, that they had to be close to God because that was probably the only thing that they could rely on.
You think,
Because Moses was taught that he was a Jew, and he was taught
That's right.
his religion by his mother and his parents, and so he was.
though, I think they were, because they built him a calf as soon as they got to Mount Horeb and Moses disappeared.
Well, just like today,
Yeah, people.
are, affected by customs and things they live around.
So you got some of both. You got some of both. You got some people who are probably strong. You got some people who are not. Okay.
And Moses and Leah went up on the mountain, and these people had nothing to do but cause trouble.
That's right. That's right. That is what I was. I mean, you made a good point here, and I think that's right. But at the same time, I wonder if it wouldn't be in your head that God has abandoned me and all these people, or has He? The question of has He? How can we live like this? When will God deliver us? That's.
And a few people can make a big crowd
They can.
follow the wrong road.
Yes, they can. Yeah. Yep. That's right. That's right. So, yes, sir. You're saying that some of them did things to ease the pain, and that made them weaker. Yeah. Okay. That's right. I can see that. What the Lord promises Abram? 3 things: many descendants, a great nation, and the land of Canaan. Right? 3 things He promised him there. And even though it's only 38 chapters, 41 chapters away in the Bible. That's a lot of time transpired in that time frame. So this is an old promise that they all knew when yeah, leaving, that's right, that are going to leave. Yep, that's right.
And there might have been only a few thousand that were building that golden calf, while the others, like some of us sometimes, just sit back and don't interfere.
That's true. That's true. All right. God hears his people call. He's going to rescue them, and he's going to fulfill his promise. That's what he tells Moses. This is where we start. All right. Now, let's move on to verses 10 through 13. Need someone to read those for me. All right. So we're going to stop right there. We're going to get into the next part here in a second. What does God say? What's his way of rescuing his people? Is it going to be a great army that comes and kills the Egyptians and frees them? No. See it all, right here at the beginning. Who's going to get the glory? Moses? God. God's going to get the glory. Now, Moses' first questioning of God's plan happens in verse 11. He says, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" And in the New King James, it has a second I, that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the children of God out of Egypt, children of Israel out of Egypt. And what is, so he's questioning right off the bat, and I don't know which one of those is accurate on the New King James versus the ESV of that second I there. But who is Moses worried about when God's plan is given to him? Himself. He's worried about how this is going to affect me. How am I going to accomplish that? And what is exactly God's answer to that? Surely, or I didn't say surely, but I will be with you. But I will be with you, right? So why are you questioning? I'll be with you. You ever, I think the obvious lesson is when we are called to do things that are not popular, that are right, do we sometimes worry about how it's going to affect us? Right? We do. Do we worry about, is that going to be successful? Are they going to dislike me? All those I think if we're honest, I certainly worry about those things from time to time. I have to play a little politics with the Little League basketball, and they have that meeting at Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. And I can't go to it, I go many times at the beginning, and I just get up and leave when I have to get up and leave. And I don't know why they do that, but that's the way it is. And the first time I worried about it, I thought for a minute, I don't know. And I said, no, this is the opportunity. A couple of years ago, we had a basketball coach that was having practices on Wednesday night, and it was frustrating for a minute. And he said, it's okay. This will be okay. This is the opportunity you have to do what's right, and God's with you, and you'll be fine. Yes, sir. Yeah, and yes, that's right. What's the sign to Moses? Go ahead.
I think this is a parallel even to the New Covenant. This is Moses
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. That is in so many ways what our faith is called to be, which is do what we're told, do what we know is right, even when we don't see how it's going to work out. Even when we don't see the end, do it anyway. Yes, sir. And go ahead, Mr. Pace. Yeah, yes, yes. And then the last question Moses asked is, what is your name? God, when the people, if I come to the people and say, God has sent me to you, they'll say, what is his name and what should I tell them? That's the question God's about to answer. I think it's a very meaningful question. And let's read 14 on its own.
After the fact that
I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Moses is 80 years old.
Yes. But he was a spry 80-year-old. Yep. So he's technically a fugitive. We talk about him going back. I'm going to go back on the slides a little bit here. You ever thought about, I didn't realize this. I always had my picture of the movie of, like everybody lived in the same big city called Egypt, right? And they just walked down the street to Pharaoh's house and talked to him, and they walked back up the street. But that's not the way it worked, because up here is where the Israelites were, around that city, Ramses was what it was later known as. But Pharaoh lived down here. And so these conversations and these plagues that y'all are going to study about in coming weeks, this is quite a journey. Quite a journey is what I'm trying to say. This is not day after day after day. This took a long time. Yep. That's it right there. It was a big area, and a fertile area.
The Pharaoh lived in Memphis.
Yep. I believe that's right, yeah. Down here. Not in the coastal plains, but up in the higher, even though it's lower on the map, higher land. Okay. What is the name of God? God said to Moses, and I've got the English Standard, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Who has a different name, anything besides I am who I am? And the I am has sent me to you. I am what? I am that I am. My footnote says I am what I am. I am that I am. Okay. That's what King James says, what? I am that I am. Chapter 15 through 22. And it is, there's so many details he says, but that's not really the point. The point is what God's plan for Moses is. All right. Somebody read 15 through 22 for me, please.
Moreover, God said to Moses, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together, and say to them, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, appeared to me, saying, I have surely visited you and seen what is done to you in Egypt. And I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of Canaan, of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. Then they will heed your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt, and you shall say to him, the Lord God of the Hebrews has met with us, and now, please, let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not even by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders, which I will do in its midst, and after that he will let you go. And I will give you this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall be, when you go, that you shall not go empty-handed. But every woman shall ask of her neighbor, namely of her who dwells near her house, articles of silver, articles of gold, and clothing, and you shall put them on your sons and on your daughters. So you shall plunder the Egyptians.
All right. What's the plan? God lays out the plan for Moses. This is what we're going to do. First, you're going to what? Get the people behind you. Go to the elders of the Jews. Let them know who you are. Get them following you. Number 2, we're just going to go do what of the king? Ask. Hey, we're going to take off now. And actually, the question is not, let us go forever. It's just let us go into the wilderness for 3 days. That's the plan. He's not going to allow it, and so the Lord is going to have an opportunity to demonstrate His power, right? This is when the power of God is going to be on display. We know it as the 10 plagues. All right? Next, He will let you go. And as you go, as you stroll out of the cities and land of the people who have been enslaving you, what are you going to do? Plunder them. You're going to plunder them. Does that sound like a plan that any of us would come up with? Does it sound like one that's 100% going to work? No, that sounds crazy. Except for the power of God. I was in the teen class last week, or was talking to Jack Davis last week about this, and they had to plunder the Egyptians because otherwise they could not have built all the metal stuff they needed for the tabernacle. In order to build that stuff, they had to take some precious metals with them. Or the golden calf. Or the golden calf. That's right. It can be used for good or ill. That's the second bell, and someone and make you indulge me for one more minute. I'm going to tell you about one of my favorite lessons there that I ran out of time for. And that is, God calls Himself, I am the God, in verse 15, the Lord, that's the word Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. That's how He identifies Himself earlier, and that's how He identifies Himself there. I see any hands. Nobody wants to risk it. Mark chapter 12, 19 through 27. We don't have an opportunity to read this. When the Sadducees who don't believe in the Spirit come and say, 7 brothers and the wife's married all of them, and whose wife is she, right? This is absurd. How does Jesus answer them using this passage? He says, because God says, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, that means that they still exist and God still exists, and that means their souls last and endure. And therefore, verse 27, I meant to. That's right. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. You are quite wrong about there not being a soul. These men still lived then, and they still live now. It proves there's a soul. And what's the basis of Jesus' argument there? The tense of the verb. I am, and the tense of the verb, I am, is the basis for Jesus making that point. So this is the point I would also derive from that for us. If the Spirit preserves, and the Lord's preserved His Word for us, and if Jesus makes a very important point from the tense of the verb of one of the words used here, we better be careful with every bit of it ourselves too. Every bit of it means something. Thank you for your attention today. We warmed up as we went along, and I appreciate it. Have a good night.